much.
Thank you. Senator Durbin.
Mr. Chairman, anyone across America who tuned into this hearing has a right to be confused. If you were told this is a hearing on a presidential election, it's true, but not the one that occurred a week ago. We're talking about a presidential election campaign 4 years ago. Yes, we are focusing on a presidential election, but we are examining for the fourth time the role of Russians in the 2016 election 4 years ago. And more importantly, we are discussing President Trump's conclusion, despite intelligence evidence to the contrary, that the Russian collusion was a hoax. For this Senate Judiciary Committee, it's all about Hillary. It's all about outgoing President Trump's bizarre theories of justice. This is a last-ditch, desperate undertaking to deal with President Trump's grievances about that election. We've all conceded the point. Carter Page was not treated properly. Both sides of the aisle have said as much. How many more times do we need to say it? I want to say it again today because I still believe it. But what are we actually facing here? What is the state of play in America today that the Senate Judiciary Committee might be interested in? Well, let's take a few items. We did have an election, a landmark moment in history. A sitting president, Donald Trump, who has routinely disrespected the rule of law, undermined democratic institutions, put his own interest ahead of the interest of the American people, ignored science and public health when it comes to this pandemic, and violated basic standards of honesty and decency. In unprecedented numbers, a clear majority of Americans voted to say, that's it, we're finished with you, and replace him with President-elect Joe Biden and Vice President-elect Kamala Harris, incidentally 2 senators who served honorably on this committee. The election sent a clear message. It's time to stop relitigating issues of the last election. It's time, finally, to put behind us the divisiveness and vitriol of the Trump era and to bring our fractured country together to address COVID, number one, and put our economy back on its feet. But here we are today, 7 days after that election, and our committee is holding another partisan hearing to advance President Trump's theories. This is the 4th hearing this year on the last administration, the previous administration's Justice Department, in response to President Trump's repeated calls to investigate the investigators and to try to rewrite the story of Russia's involvement in the 2016 campaign. Meanwhile, the Senate Judiciary Committee that we sit on here hasn't held a single oversight hearing on the Trump administration's Justice Department in this Congress. Any issues we might want to raise? I can think of a few. Perhaps we might even investigate the Department of Homeland Security and their zero-tolerance policy. I regret what happened to Carter Page, and I've said so before, but I also regret what happened to 2,200 infants, toddlers, and children who were physically removed from their parents by the zero-tolerance policy of the Trump administration, and the fact that 545 of those children still are in an abandoned status today. 545. So my question, as has been asked to the witness before us today, is who should be held responsible? Why wouldn't the Senate Judiciary Committee even care to have a hearing? Why wouldn't the Immigration Subcommittee, which I am a ranking member on with the senator from Texas, even have one hearing on that issue? None. But this is the 4th hearing we're having, going back over this well-plowed ground. There are some timely issues related to the Department of Justice we might even have considered today. Let me give you one. Yesterday, Attorney General Bill Barr issued a memo authorizing federal prosecutors to, quote, pursue substantial allegations of voting and vote tabulation irregularities prior to the certification of elections. The Attorney General's memo represents another instance of his sacrificing the reputation of the Department of Justice to serve the political interests of President Donald Trump. Attorney General Barr is clearly attempting to fabricate a veneer of legitimacy for the baseless claims of voter fraud made by President Trump and his supporters. And he's doing so by overriding long-standing Department of Justice policies that were put in place to prevent this very type of political interference in an election season. Let me tell you what the previous guidelines that previous attorney generals honored said. Quote, public knowledge of a criminal investigation could impact the adjudication of election litigation and contest in state courts. Accordingly, it is the general policy of the Justice Department not to conduct overt investigations. End of quote. Attorney General Barr jettisoned that standard yesterday. The Barr memo prompted the Department of Justice Director of Election Crimes Branch to resign from his position. An issue the Senate Judiciary Committee might want to be concerned about? No, I'm sorry. We're back relitigating the 2016 election. We're going to go through that all over again, maybe a fifth time, instead of asking pertinent and relevant questions about what's happening today. Mr. Richard Pilger, who resigned from that position, noted that Barr's memo, quote, abrogated the 40-year-old non-interference policy for ballot fraud allegations in the period prior to elections becoming certified and uncontested, end of quote. When General Barr came before me in my office, I asked him point blank, why do you want to be Donald Trump's Attorney General? Well, he said, you should have seen the list of other people who might have been also considered. I thought that I should step in at that point. And secondly, he said, I want to preserve the reputation of the Department of Justice. Is there anyone on or off this committee who believes that General Barr's actions yesterday preserve the integrity of the Department of Justice, where baseless claims are being made about voter fraud? Do you know what the litigants' record is in court since the election, protesting the outcome of the election? 0 for 10. They have no evidence whatsoever of election fraud. If they did, they would certainly bring it forward. I want to close by thanking former President George W. Bush of Texas for stepping up and doing the honorable thing and acknowledging to now President-elect Joe Biden that he did win, that he will be the next president, and he, President Bush, as a proud Republican, thought that that was time for him to step up for the good of the Republic. I yield.
Thanks, Senator Durbin. I would like to respond to some of the comments you made about the committee, what we're doing and why. Number one, we are going to investigate how the Carter Page warrant application was submitted numerous times to the FISA court with inaccurate information. I think it's important to have every person who signed it say, if I knew then what I know now, I wouldn't have signed it. To me, it's actually pretty stunning. In the committee in September the 29th received information for Director Radcliffe that in September of 2016, September the 7th, the CIA informs the FBI that candidate Hillary Clinton approved of a plan concerning U.S. presidential candidate Donald Trump and Russia hackers hampering U.S. elections as a means of distracting the public from her use of a private mail server. And if you go look at the classified information, there's more there. And I guess what we're saying is that you accept without any doubt that the FBI should have looked at all things Trump based on Papadopoulos, that it would have been a dereliction of duty not to do so. What we're suggesting is that when the CIA informs the FBI that Hillary Clinton may have signed off on a plan to link Trump to Russia for political reasons, nobody did anything. There wasn't an investigation opened. Mr. McCabe didn't even know about it. The FBI director says it didn't ring a bell. The person it went to was Peter Strzok, who was incredibly biased against President Trump. So I guess what we're saying, if you believe it would have been a dereliction of duty not to look at Trump based on a statement by the Australian ambassador to the United Kingdom regarding a bar conversation in London that led to everything we've dealt with for 2.5 years, we were wondering, just out loud here, how could you ignore the CIA information provided to the FBI that the Democratic candidate for president signed off on a plan to link Trump to Russia for political reasons, which may explain some of the garbage of Crossfire Hurricane? Now, you're okay with that. We're